the last section, part 4, is the actual précis itself. So up until this point, you've been doing a lot of work to get prepared for the précis, but now it's the précis. So this particular piece is it's going to be typed, this whole thing should be typed, double space Times New Roman 12-point font. Like, that's how all writing assignments are in here, the end. So just to give you an idea, précis is actually a common phrase used in academia. I didn't see it until I was in college, but what it is, it's actually a brief summary that follows a specific format. So that's what you're doing. It's a paragraph that you are being asked to identify specific pieces of these articles. And so there are 5 sentences. There are 5 sentences in which you are going to complete or write for the complete précis. The first one is, and I'm sorry, 5 sentences. It might end up being like 7 or 8 sentences, but there are 5 sections of this paragraph. So the first sentence is actually a single sentence where you have to identify the author, title, date, and publication source. That's what the first sentence is going to do. You are also then going to provide the most accurate verb that the article is doing, and then you're going to articulate like what the major claim is. And so a verb, oftentimes, like, because all of these articles have an argument, you need to identify the argument. So if it's an argument, then you are going to say, you know, Elizabeth Hayne asserts that such and such and such. So that's an argument. If they refute something, that means they're going against it. If they are arguing something, obviously. So use a verb that means that they are presenting some type of claim. But sometimes, I would say maybe 2 times out of 10, you're going to get a news article that doesn't have a clear actual argument to itself. And so instead, you might use something like explains. Like, Elizabeth Hayne explains the process of photosynthesis in her article. Boom, got it. So that's fine. You can also say, like, Elizabeth Hayne sheds light on the crisis in such and such and such and such. So rather than saying Elizabeth Hayne argues that the crisis needs to be solved, perhaps it's simply a text that says that, or it conveys that the crisis is happening. All right. So, or you could say like Elizabeth Hayne praises the work of President Obama considering the Iran deal. Like, that would be what the author's trying to do with the article. So you have to pick your verb very specifically. And this is oftentimes very difficult for students because they don't acknowledge the importance of verbs. That the better the verb, the better your sentence. If you have a strong, concise verb, then your sentence is going to be strong and concise. And yeah, it's going to be a struggle the first couple times. But the more you get used to thinking about your verb usage, the easier it becomes. So here's an example one of Leonard Pitt's article. In his May 30th, 2000 editorial titled Idiot Warning Labels, published in the Baltimore Sun, Leonard Pitts Jr. proclaims that warning labels are spreading stupidity among the public. So I've identified the date, the title, where it was published, and the author. So that's that first part there. And then I've provided a verb. So I'm saying he's presenting an actual argument because he's proclaiming. And then that warning labels are spreading stupidity among the public. So that is the argument that he's trying to convey in this article. Okay? Clear, concise sentence, boom. Now, the second part of the précis is a sentence or 2. Really, it shouldn't be any more than 2, but here could be 2 sentences explaining how the author develops and supports the argument. So you did this a little bit with Smink. Like, what is, you had to identify Smink's argument, then you had to explain why you know that argument is there. So you need to provide some detail about how you know that that's the argument. And here you can use the quoted text. You can use, and don't use full sentences, but you can use the most important nuggets from, or quotes from the text itself. So here's an example, right? So I've moved from this sentence, and here's the next sentence in my paragraph. Pitt describes the obvious warnings on labels to accentuate how people don't need to think anymore. Okay, so I'm saying that I'm saying that he's describing warnings, and why he's doing that. So I know I'm saying, like, this is what he's doing, and here's how it connects to the argument. And he continues to explain, so what he's doing, and then here's more. The weak too survive, pass on their weaknesses down as well. So that's what he's doing. And then to prove that this lack of thinking will spread stupidity, that's proving it to the argument. So notice how each one of these sentences has a what he does, why he does it. What he does, why he does it. So these are what and why. So think of question number 2 as the what and why. All right. Then the third section is a single sentence. This should really be one sentence analyzing the author's purpose. And in this sentence, you should really have the phrase in order to. So such and such does this in order to blank. Okay? So one sentence, and here's an example here. Pitts vents his frustration. So that's what he's doing in this article. So I'm saying what he does. So I'm kind of like combining or putting my own spin on what's going on there. In order to bring awareness to the fact that corporations intellectually demean consumers. So he's not actually saying, like, he is arguing that we're being stupid, but the reason he's bringing this up, or what he wants to accentuate with this information, is that it's corporations that are really hurting our ability to be like they're kind of like mocking us. Like, don't operate a toaster in the bathtub. That seems pretty mocking, and he does articulate that in his article. And so this sentence here tells me, why is he presenting this? What does he want to do in this article? He is presenting this argument this way to do this. This is what he's arguing, this is how he's doing it, and why this information connects to the argument, and this is why that's being made. All right? The fourth section there is a single sentence describing the intended audience for the piece, or describing the relationship the author establishes with the audience. So here, think of this as simply looking at audience, right? It must be clear how you know this is the audience for this piece. So you need to make it very clear what evidence do you have that this is the audience. So you identify the audience, first of all, and then second of all, you tell me how you know. So because this article is published in a widely read national newspaper, so I'm presenting some evidence right away, his audience consists of typical American readers and consumers. So because it's a widely read, so it's read all over, Baltimore Sun is read everywhere, so it's going to be like it's common with typical readers and consumers, people who may agree with the absurdity of such labels. So I'm identifying that it's a wide audience, so he seems to be assuming that we agree with this idea as well. So if I were going to do something about like smink, I would say, because the New York Times is a widely read newspaper with a high-class audience, not high-class, I'm sorry, high-income audience, which is statistically true. Smink seems to be encouraging his high-income audience to not donate, but use their potential political power and financial power to encourage the government to provide funds. And so I'm looking at the source, who's the audience of the source, and then I would say why that's important, or like how is this, what's important about the audience there. So with David Brooks, I might say, you know, since it's published in the New York Times, these people have higher income, as well as higher education. Typically, readership of the New York Times has a minimum of high school education, more likely master's degree. Again, that is seen through research that they've done. A couple different areas have seen that. Then I would say that Brooks is articulating a potential concern that the people who have money can deal with. Like, Brooks is concerning himself with issues of mental weakness, when other people might be concerned with actual physical, I need to feed myself, so I don't really worry about my character flaws. So I need to identify who or what is the audience, and how do you know it's the audience, right? So And then finally, the last sentence, and this is like, it says a single sentence. I'd be okay if you fudged it into 2 sentences. Maybe 2? I'm okay with that. You need to articulate why this article is important to the local community, state, nation, and or world. And this is the one that typically tends to trip students up. That they find an article and they're like, Miss Haynes, is this a good article? I don't know if it's a good article. The only way I could identify if it's good or not is whether or not I can address this. So if I get a news article about local cat stuck in tree, firefighter saves cat. Like, okay, got it. Is that a good article? Well, I have no idea why I care about that. Not a clue. Like, I don't know why anyone would care about that. It's a dumb cat that climbed up in a tree and wouldn't shut up, and now the firefighter has to go get it. Got it. Don't care. Like, it doesn't, that's not important. However, talking about the refugee crisis in Europe is important for us to know, because those refugees are also making their way over to the United States. Are we going to welcome them? We're not very welcoming already to potential refugees and immigrants that come to the United States. I mean, the whole labeling them as illegal immigrants kind of, or some of them as illegal immigrants kind of, doesn't make us look too inviting at times. And so it's good to know about the crisis and how Europe is handling it, because then maybe the United States could learn from that, or maybe they would come together to help the refugees that are in Europe, the Syrian refugees in Europe. So it has the potential and probably will impact America, and definitely the financial state as well. I mean, there's way more reasons to care about the refugee crisis in Europe as opposed to the dumb cat in the tree. So you must articulate, why should someone read about this? Think about why would you tell your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa to read this article? Why would you tell your friend to read this article? Aside from the fact like, haha, it's funny, look at this article about Miley Cyrus. No one cares. They care about something about themselves, something about their community, about their world, about their country. So here's an example here. Many news outlets and commentators have voiced concern over anti-intellectual movement in America, denying scientific findings, using anecdotes instead of facts to support ideas, calling people losers when they disagree rather than providing a counter-argument. So here's like defining what this anti-intellectual movement is and providing details. And Pitts is proving that this is more widely accepted than the public probably realized. So I'm saying it's important because this is a movement, and Pitts doesn't think we know enough about this movement. So obviously the corporations care a lot about it. They see this movement happening, and so they're just going to continue to demean us. And so he's trying to shed the light on, we shouldn't treat each other or idolize idiocy. We should instead idolize those that don't need warning labels, like toasters. Don't use the toaster in the bathtub. We shouldn't idolize people that deny science. We should instead encourage and reward people that look to evidence to make decisions. And so Pitts is trying to warn us of this potential problem. And so this sentence does exactly that, tells us why it is important. What's going on here? Why should I care? So why should I care? Why should I care? Why should I care? Why should you care? Why should your neighbor care? Why should someone in Pennsylvania care? Why should the president of France care? Why should these people care, right? Your neighbor's not going to care about a dumb cat, or I guarantee you a person in Pennsylvania doesn't care about a stupid cat in a tree. So if you cannot answer that question, if you cannot write a statement about why something is important, then it's a bad article. Okay? And I'm willing to entertain different reasons as to why it's important. One year a young woman wrote about a restaurant that had a heart attack theme, like literally all of the nurses or all of the waitresses were nurses, and a man had a heart attack there. Doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It seems like local news. But she explained how this type of establishment approves of and does not do anything to stop the potential harms of obesity in America. And so that was a pretty good articulation. So if you can articulate why it's important, then it's a good article.